My pleasure now to introduce our featured speaker, James Howard. James is a lecturer, design historian, industrial designer, inventor of some 300 products with 20 patents. He owns and operates Entrepreneurial U, a special private career school for design thinking. One of Howard's courses, Bridge, Exploring New Career Pathways, takes students through the problem-solving process, and I think I need your course. It's like we got a lot of problems. Solution execution, and leads them to new career pathways and job opportunities. It's my pleasure to introduce James Howard.
Good afternoon, everyone. I want to begin by thanking Jack Miller. He's the reason why I'm here now. I had the pleasure of spending a day with Jack at my office and over lunch. And I'll be very transparent with you. When I came in and Alice told me that, Jack was the one that brought me to the chamber, I'm saying to myself, Jack Miller, I know that name. And then when I saw that tall, soaring, attractive face of a body right there, I put it all together. So thank you so much, Jack. Appreciate it. My pleasure. Well, I'm James Howard, and I'm on a mission to build the country's first museum dedicated exclusively to the pioneering genius and immortalizing the pioneering genius of African-American inventors for the past 400 years. And I've been given about 20 minutes to tell you that story. So we're going to start on the front end of it. We're going to take ourselves back to the 1980s, where I decided to leave a well-paying job. Had just gotten a pay increase of $14,000, had just been appointed the head of the design program and the engineering program, and had just purchased a brand new home, had just found out that my wife was pregnant with our first child, and had just bought a brand new car. So with all of these new things happening, what do I decide to do? Leave a job of 7 years, a secure job of 7 years, to start my own industrial design practice. But with so many things going against me, there was no option but to proceed and be successful. So that journey started in 1987, and we fast forward to 1990. By that time, I had acquired accounts for the likes of Colgate-Palmolive, Coca-Cola, and the CIA. Had designed tons of products for all of those entities, and if I told you what I had designed for the CIA, I would have to detain every single one of you for the duration of the day. But in that experience, I had one thing happen to me that I found quite revealing, somewhat epochal. I had designed an award-winning blow dryer for Conair, okay? I got a patent on it. It was about my 8th patent by that time. Got a patent on it, and it was highly successful. And a few years later, I'm courting an electronic manufacturer from New Jersey for a big contract in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And we're 99% of the way there. And suddenly I get a fax. We were still faxing during that time, right? I get a fax from this director of engineering saying, James, I'm sorry, we're pulling back on the account. We're not going to give you this account. So naturally, I hop on the phone and ask why. And the gentleman tells me, he says, James, while we were vetting companies, the last company we vetted, right after we decided we were going to work with you, was a company in New York that happened to have had your blow dryer on their mantle. And when we questioned them on it, they told us that you were lying, you were an imposter, and there's no way you had anything to do with this blow dryer. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, it can be an honest mistake, what have you, maybe they did something similar. So I dug into the weeds, and I understand, and I learned that sure enough, it was my blow dryer. So when I offered to fax this gentleman a copy of my patent, right? This is what I got back. I'm sorry, James. I see you did, in fact, design the blow dryer, but the truth of the matter is, I don't know who to believe. I don't know who to believe. So I sat on that. You fast forward, a few years later, I got my handy little reminder of my notes here. You fast forward, I started a design history course, and I go on the lecture circuit, lecturing about black inventors. And at that time, there was still much that I had to learn. So what did I learn in my lectures? I stumbled upon a Benjamin Montgomery, who was one of the first black inventors who was denied a patent simply because he was black and a slave. And even his master, the brother of Jefferson Davis, his master could not get a patent on his behalf, right? And then I learned about, in 1888, Ellen Eglin, a domestic Washington servant from Washington, D.C., who had designed and patented a clothes wringer that revolutionized the laundry industry at that time. If you can just sort of picture that in your head, the laundry industry at that time. And Ellen Eglin would sell her patent for $18 and receive 0 franchise for her efforts. And when asked a few years later why she sold it for so little money, Eglin would reply, "You know I am black, and white women would not buy my clothes wringer if they knew it was designed and patented by someone of color." Her words. This is during the 90s when I'm on my lecture circuit. Now you advance to the year 2016, and I'm grocery shopping, and I'm standing in the aisle like we all do, and suddenly I see a Time magazine article on the front page, special article, special issue, Time magazine's 100 top American inventors for the past 100 years. Okay. I pick it up, I thumb through it, front to back. I don't see a single black face, not one. So I go home. I said, you know what, maybe I'll rush through it. So I uplifted myself from my bed at 2 in the morning. That is just how much that bothered me. And I went and looked at that magazine again. This time I purchased it. I should have purchased it the first time. I could have got some sleep that night, right? But I thumbed through it a second time, and I still don't see a black face, but then I decided to read the preface, and inside the jacket on the preface, it explains why they did not include George Washington Carver in small print, why they did not include him. And then I looked to the back page, on the very last page, all the way at the bottom, 2 black pioneers, both in the medical science field, and both could pass for white. I can't make this up. And I'll mention the names now, and if you know any of these pioneers, you'll be shaking your head in agreement. Dr. Charles Drew and Dr. Daniel Hell Williams. They were the only 2 in there, right? So that kind of begins to weigh on me. I'm thinking back to my own experience where I am denied a $100,000 contract because this gentleman can't believe me over foolproof, and someone was calling me a liar and an imposter, right? Then I'm thinking back to the Montgomerys, Benjamin Montgomery and Ellen Eglin, and I'm saying to myself, something just ain't right. Something just ain't right. So we fast forward. Now it's the year 2019. And I'm looking at the celebration on the lawn in the Washington Capitol of the opening of the African American Cultural Museum, Smithsonian African American Cultural Museum. It was 3 hours. 3 hours. And I chose to look at it at nighttime, around 11 o'clock. 3 hours. So what time is it when I'm done? 2 o'clock, right? In that entire 3-hour episode, dignitary after dignitary, not a single mention of a black inventor. Now, the late, great John Lewis did happen to mention, as he is speaking somewhat indirectly, the word George Washington Carver came out of his mouth, but it was not a point of emphasis of black innovation. It was just a passing word. One name, 3 hours. That bothered me. I go to sleep, I wake back up, and I watch it again. Okay? So it's 5 o'clock by the time I get to sleep. And I'm saying to myself, something just ain't right. So you fast forward, COVID has set in. At this time, I am operating one of the most successful tea rooms in the entire state called Cozy Cupboard Tea Room. It was on Madison Avenue in Convent Station. And COVID shut down my tea room. Right? At this time, I'm operating Entrepreneurial U, that Bill mentioned, and COVID shut that down, brought it to a screeching halt. So I said to myself, I have to do something to stay busy. So what did I decide to do? I decided to sort of go on the lecture circuit virtually. I was introduced to this very annoying thing called Zoom, and have since become a surrogate father of Zoom ever since. But there was one gentleman by the name of Dale Caldwell, I apologize, and Dale had asked me to be on his television show. And it was talking about my experience as a designer and an inventor and a historian. And Dale asked these words at the end of the talk. He says, James, you have a very interesting history. Have you ever thought about opening up a Black Inventors Hall of Fame? And I sat on that. And within seconds, I started recounting those 2 visits to the supermarket line, where I did not find one single recognizable African-American inventor in the Time magazine. And I did not find, at that time, I thought back about me being denied this large contract, and I thought back to Eglin and Montgomery, and I looked right on the screen and told Dale, you're right, I'm gonna do it. So I started Black Inventors Hall of Fame, okay? And along that journey, in starting the Black Inventors Hall of Fame, I started reading and learning more. And I had learned that George Washington Carver definitely should have been in that magazine, because in 1941, they had held this man as the Black Leonardo. And we all know what that reference is, right? The Black Leonardo. But yet, nearly 70 years hence, or more than 70 years hence, he's not even mentioned in the magazine. So I started putting 2 and 2 together, and I says, James, listen, all of this bitterness isn't going to get you anywhere. All of this second guessing isn't going to get you anywhere. You need to take the bull by the horn today and start the Black Inventors Hall of Fame. And it has operated since 2000 as a virtual museum. And now, thank you. And now, due to the fact that many of our stories are untold, many of our stories are forgotten, many of our stories are challenged, maligned, like that of Benjamin Banneker. Pretty much every single accomplishment Benjamin Banneker has achieved throughout his lifetime has been put to question and maligned, from the wooden clock to his contributions to the almanac, to his very assistance in surveying the land of Washington, D.C. Every aspect of it has been maligned and questioned. And many untold stories have simply been sequestered. But members of the Princeton Chamber of Commerce, I'm here to tell you right now as I stand here, sequestered no more. The Black Inventors Hall of Fame Museum and STEAM Learning Center will be located on Broad Street in Newark. And thank you. And we're targeting late 2025 for its opening. But we have a daunting task. We have a very daunting task. In fact, Arthur Demerick, who is a leading historian with the Smithsonian Institute and the Lemelson Center for Innovation, when Arthur first learned of what I was trying to do, he sends me a lengthy email, that thick, literally that big. And he closes it at the bottom by saying, James, you know, trying to open up a museum short of a Smithsonian museum is a very daunting task. And I wrote back to Arthur a very short statement saying, yes, Arthur, it's the daunting aspect of that task that is propelling me to do what I'm doing. Sorry. And since then, he has brought me in front of all the key people at the Smithsonian. On March 10th, I'll be taking my entire board, my executive board, and my museum planning board to the African American Museum in Washington. And we're going to take a 2-hour tour with the Director Kevin Young. And while I'm on the subject of the African American Museum, when I take you back to that 3-hour episode when they were talking about all the contributions that the museum would do and all the things that it would do, this is the one thing that I noticed was problematic. There were too many stories of our rich music history, too many stories of our rich sports history. But I'm here to tell you, the African American specimen in this country is much larger than just musicians and athletes. Brilliance. Just during the golden era of innovation in this country, which is defined as the 1870s to 1940s, African Americans applied for more than 55,000 patents. 55,000 patents. We are rich and we are large, and I want to use the Black Inventors Hall of Fame Museum to help tell that story. It is too important not to. And why do we do it, you ask? But I just had a conversation with my friend over there with the golf tee. Bob? Ed, I apologize for that. Just had a conversation with Ed on why we do this. And we do it for the kids. We do it for today's youth. Today's underserved youth, it is necessary that we create a platform and we create a conduit for them to be able to reach great heights in the field of STEM. Right? And this is an undeniable statistic. If you don't believe why it's so important to do this, when we level the playing field and when we balance the distribution of wealth, particularly in the sciences and technology, right? Our gross national product can be increased to the tune of more than $2 trillion. There have been numerous studies on that. This is why this is so important. So when the Black Inventors Hall of Fame Museum does eventually exist, all right, I've been taking a little checklist and I've been making note of every single organization I come across over the past year, and I'll be extending a personal invite to the Princeton Chamber of Commerce because it will exist. We're on a pathway to making that happen. And I just thank the Lord that He has handed me the baton to finish that race that the African American Museum and Cultural Center should have actually started. But in that 400,000 square foot megatropolis of a building, and I'm sure many of you have been there, they chose, for some reason, not to highlight the glorious accomplishment of African American inventors. There's things in there about our slavery past. There's things in there about the civil rights. Rightfully so. This is a rich aspect of where we've been over the past 400 years. But nothing short of one exhibit on Boystad, Henry Boystad from Ohio, the inventor of the bedstead that had a special high rail and a special rails for beds, right? The Henry bedstead. They had his bed on display. Other than that, nothing about our history. So I thank Director Young, and I thank Lonnie Bunch, and I thank everyone who had anything to do with that building, because if they had just put aside maybe 30, 40,000 square feet of space to tell our rich, illustrious history of black innovation in this country, Jack, I don't think I would have been as incentivized to carry this baton. Because I don't know about you, but when I'm in the supermarket line at 11 o'clock at night, I like to go home and get my sleep. And so, to this very day, I continue to be incentivized, but the incentive is being able to see the reward, being able to see the prospects of the reward of having kids from all over the country, right, visit the museum. And if they can't get there, I need to let you know this. We plan on building the museum on the mainframe of the metaverse. So every single kid in this country, every home, every classroom will have access to the experience. We're going to also have a metaverse library. We're going to have a Legends Hall. We're going to have a hall dedicated to Elijah J. McCoy, the great prolific inventor who, after getting his certification as a master engineer, was told that we do not hire blacks as engineers. And so what did he do? He's empathetic. He decides he is going to invent a lubricating cup because he had to settle for, and please pardon this expression, particularly if we have any firemen here, right? But this was just the impression of his mother and father. This lowly assignment as a fireman on the train station because they wanted their son to get his rightful place as a master engineer, which he had earned. But he worked as a fireman, and every time the train would come in, he would notice that it would have to sit there for hours and hours and hours just to be lubricated. That's a loss of money. That's a loss of money. And due to his lubricating cup, it transformed that entire industry. But yet, 40 years hence, when a gentleman by the name of Abrams decides that he's going to write the ultimate book, penultimate book on the history of locomotion in this country, right? Guess who he excluded? Yes, he purposely excluded the contributions of Elijah J. McCoy. And that's really sad because so successful was his product that rather than people buy it, because that was his intention initially, everyone told him no because he was black. But yet, they designed and engineered it anyway. There were so many knockoffs of Elijah J. McCoy's lubricating cup that those in the know would walk into the store looking to purchase a lubricating cup for their locomotive, and then they would stop the salesman and go, oh, hey, by the way, is it the real McCoy? And that's where that expression came from, because they knew just how superior Elijah J. McCoy's lubricating cup was. So when you visit the Black Inventors Hall of Fame Museum and STEAM Learning Center, you will find a locomotive, a life-size locomotive from that era. And guess what else you'll find? One of his lubricating cups. That's a key mission of mine. So I think my 20 minutes are almost up, but I want to close by actually stating what another gentleman, VJ, where are you, VJ? Where's VJ? Is right there. VJ just reminded me of a close that I used to make all the time to my students at County College of Morris, where I was a full-time professor for 16 years. At their graduation, or their last day with me, I would look at my students, And I would tell them what they're about to get into, blah, blah, blah. It's not too late to change your mind. I would tell them all those things, right? But I would close by quoting what my mentor, Sambo Mockbee, a professor at Auburn University, he has since died from cancer, but Professor Mockbee created a program called the Rural Studio. And he would have his students design and build houses and public spaces, right, for the community. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with Auburn University, but just a stone's throw from Auburn happens to reside one of the poorest neighborhoods in the entire country. And Sambo's mission was to have his students contribute to uplift that community. Sambo would close graduation ceremonies by advising his students to proceed and be bold. Proceed and be bold. And ladies and gentlemen, this is the emphasis, right? And this is the mantra that I have carried ever since I first learned of that over 15, 20 years ago. I've continued to carry that mantra, and now I'm in great position to simply practice what I preach. I'm proceeding, and by God, I'm being bold. Thank you. Yeah, I'll get some questions. Thank you. Thank you. Do I have a question back there? Go ahead. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to say what you shared shows the cost to our society of discrimination, right? And people act like discrimination is a good thing for society, or some people
It really isn't.
no, that it costs economically,
Yep.
it costs ethically, and in so many ways. So I thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
When you first started talking about the Hall of Fame, I would want to make the pitch for Trenton, and I heard Newark,
Mm-hmm.
our sisters in Newark,
Mm-hmm.
something falls through. Please come and
You know, I love what you're saying because I am keeping all of my options open, and the truth be told, I did have Trenton in my scope. I appreciate that. Proceed and be bold. Oh, yes. Not, oh, yeah. I'm not going to play poker with you. I can tell you that right now. Oh, I know that. There will be a lot of great reasons to come to Trenton.
is the whole issue, and thinking about Lonnie Bunch as the first
Mm-hmm.
American head of the
Mm-hmm.
if you can have your Black Inventors Hall of Fame fall under the umbrella of the Smithsonian to get that
Mm-hmm.
space,
Mm-hmm.
that might be a possibility, or maybe it's not, but anyway, I just want to thank you
Yeah.
for what you're doing.
No, I appreciate that. And to answer your question directly, we're having conversations with them right now about becoming an affiliate of Smithsonian. Yes, and that's one of the things we're going to discuss over lunch, why we are there on March 10th. Yes. Yes.
I just have to say that thank you for such a wonderful story and for moving forward. In the Museum in Washington, I found it interesting that the defibrillator does not have Dr. Levi Watkins Jr.'s anything around
Yeah,
it.
around it.
And so I hope that if you have a defibrillator,
Mhm.
that you will give homage to that African American.
I certainly will. I'll be giving homage to him, and I'll be giving homage to all of the great medical pioneers from Dr. Drew, as I mentioned previously, and Dr. Daniel Hell Williams, and even a present doctor right now who is doing amazing things, right? Amazing things. And her name is Dr. Hadalia Nicole Green, who is right now applying nanotechnology for helping to eradicate cancer off the face of this earth. And Dr. Green was preceded 400 years ago by another slave who was not a doctor, but he actually introduced the inoculation process to the Western world, right? That would eventually go on and lead to the invention of vaccines. Onesimus, in 1721, African-American slave, introduced the inoculation process that saved the town of Boston from the ravages of smallpox. So if we just place Onesimus here and Dr. Nicole Hadalia Green here, and in between, you'll hear the stories of thousands upon thousands of untold stories of African American innovation. So yes, thank you so much for bringing that to our attention. Anyone else? Any other questions? Yes.
Have you talked to the Hall of Fame of the General Hall of Fame Center about integrating more minorities and not just black minorities, we have women, we have Asians, and so on, into the Hall of Fame? One, and then two, did you ever call Time Magazine and ask them why they?
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I still plan to actually contact, and I suspect it was a young writer and a young editor who just wasn't somewhat sensitive even to the selections they were making.
I think they should be a sponsor.
Thank you. I appreciate that. But I do want to get to your question directly about the National Inventors Hall of Fame. They are one of our strategic partners. They're one of my first strategic partners. And just a little over a year ago, they asked me to join them in the design and curating of their first ever Black Inventors Exhibit Hall. And that exhibit hall will have its opening house this month, okay, in Alexandria, Virginia. And there you will see an exhibit dedicated to the Black Inventors Experience. And they just did something very important, okay? Two things I mentioned, then I'll close. First of all, in 1973 is when they started the National Inventors Hall of Fame. It took 19 years for them to induct their first black inventor. 19 years. Now chew on that, but think forward. It took them 50 years before they inducted their first black female inventor. And that took place just last year, right? Dr. Marian Croak from Google, head of Google engineering globally, and the late, great Dr. Patricia Bath. In fact, my medical science hall is named after Dr. Patricia Bath. And her daughter is going to bequeath to me enough of her artifacts so that I can recreate a life in the day of this amazing woman at the exhibit hall. So thank you so much for asking about that. We have a great relationship with the National Inventors Hall of Fame. And I would be remiss if I didn't also make note of this. I do an annual induction ceremony. So if any of you want to suggest or recommend any African-American inventor, present and past, just go to my email and send me your recommendation. My first induction class included Dr. Patricia Bath, included Granville T. Woods, included the likes of the great present day Dr. Gladys West, who is one of the oldest living present legends in black invention. She is affectionately regarded as the mother of GPS, okay? So it included those types of people, Dr. Charles Drew and so forth. And I had the pleasure of doing that induction on the 100th commemorative anniversary of the Tulsa race riots down in Tulsa, right on the Tulsa campus. So it was a pleasure. Thanks for bringing that up. And again, it was an absolute pleasure, everyone. Thank you.